So I'm so excited about our next speaker because our next guest because he's going to take us on a slightly different bend in showing us how we can take what we have already created, that hard earned product that we've created. Yesterday, Kelly Tenney spent a lot of time talking with us about how to create micro courses. And that would be a great way, to get that word out there. And I know Shadid is going to talk to us a lot about some of the options we have for taking those that original coursework we did or that original product that we produced and licensing and getting it onto more stages, getting it out there and making it a piece or a method of gaining recurring revenue, which I know we all would love to know more about. So with that, I am going to bring Shadid online. Hey there.
Hello, Dumont. Dr. Dumont, how are you doing
I am
today?
doing great. How are you, Shadid?
I feel great, and it's an honor and privilege to share this stage with you, as well as speak with your audience about the magic that is content licensing.
Yeah, and I want to. I'm just dying to get in on this because it's so exciting. But first, I wanted to just tell people a little bit about you because first of all, I think that I grew up in the military. So you're having served in the Navy, being a Navy veteran means a lot to me, and I want to thank you for that. Yeah, I mean it's important. It's important that we express our gratitude. And I was really excited to learn that, of all the work that you're doing in Baltimore with entrepreneurs. And I had not realized that you were a graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Businesses program, and also your involvement with SCORE. I mean, I've worked with SCORE, but you were the youngest chapter president of SCORE.
Yes, in the United States, this is a true
Wow.
story. Yes.
Yeah, and I know just in my own life how valuable SCORE and the mentors at SCORE have been to me. So I wanted to thank you for that also, and really learn a little bit more about this licensing strategy because I had never heard of anything like this before. And I'd be willing to bet there are other people who have never thought of this before. So, I don't want to wait another minute. I just want to hop in here and learn about it. So, first of all, could you tell us exactly what licensing content or content licensing is?
Okay, so I am a why kind of guy, meaning I need to understand the overarching let's say importance of something before taking the next step. So the why before the what. And so when
Okay.
we think about licensing, what we're doing in a licensing agreement is we're allowing for a entity such as a university, corporation, agency, or fellow entrepreneur or smaller agency rent or gain access to our intellectual property. Now, intellectual property can be defined as your books, as your courses, as your checklists. And those of you who may be involved with, let's say, social media, your posts. Those of you who may be
Mm.
involved with AI, it could be your prompts or it could be memes. And so it's giving permission to another entity for a set period of time to access your content. The benefit of it is that you're not giving away ownership of that particular intellectual property
Mm.
or content.
Mhm.
You're giving access to. So if another entity is looking to increase their market share or offer tips, tools, technology that they don't
Mhm.
know how to create themselves, they're partnering with you in a joint venture essentially in order to provide that value to their students, their clients, their employees, essentially their customer base.
Okay. And and I really understand that. And I can see the value of that. I'm wondering how you first went down. How did you end up going down this path? What was your first introduction to content licensing?
Well, it was by accident, Dumont. It was completely by accident. So we discussed military service in the start of this conversation.
Hmm.
And so when I was stationed on the Navy's oldest aircraft carrier at the time, USS Kitty Hawk, there's the
Oh.
way that Navy ships work is that there's in order to have a ship, let's say up to standard, you have to go through certain readiness checkpoints. And
Hmm.
so at this time, at the time of this that I'm sharing this story, this was 9/11, and so we were part of
Oh.
the battle group that was to respond to 9/11. And so
Okay.
the problem that we had was that our system or our database for tracking the different systems and computers, so on and so forth, that we need to respond was all outdated. And
Oh.
so we received funding from, let's say, Capitol Hill to upgrade our systems. We received a database to track, which no one
Mhm.
within my unit knew how to use. And so we typically
Okay.
worked, 10 to 12 hours a day. And so after work, I took the initiative to learn this system. Now, here's where licensing comes into this. I created the system that allowed for my division. So I'm in CS1 Combat Systems First Division. There's a
Okay.
total of 10. And
Okay.
so when our numbers, our readiness numbers started to go up, the other department chiefs started to wonder, well, what is CS1 doing in order to get their numbers up? Because it was a
Yeah.
widespread issue. And so I created a training package and gave permission, essentially a train
Um,
trainer model to CS2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
mhm.
And so the result was that our entire battle group was our readiness went above standards. I earned
Wow.
a Navy Achievement Medal during a time of war, and so that was my first introduction to creating, let's say,
Mhm.
intellectual property and giving
Yeah.
permission to, let's say, outside entities that they did not have access or knowledge to in order to benefit overall mission.
Wow. Wow. That's first of all, it was a huge responsibility to be faced with that, and be responding to 9/11. That was a time when when everybody was in a state of shock, I guess I would say, more than anything. And of course, the military was a big part of that with the response that we had. Um, so when I think of and I really like what you're saying. It makes sense to me that once we've developed something, we would want to find new avenues for it. What are some of the things that might be what are some of the misunderstandings we may have about this kind of endeavor, about content licensing?
Okay, so when we discuss content licensing, we're going to put on our score hat here and discuss
Okay.
pure small business. And so, as the great Iman Agai says, has been quoted
Uh,
as saying, the biggest mistake you can make in your business is to not make money every day. And so, many of
I've
us as
heard that.
coaches, yes,
I've heard
it's
that.
a
That
great
guy must be
thing.
pretty smart.
Yes. And so when it comes to many solopreneurs, which may be coaches, authors, speakers, freelancers, we
Mhm.
oftentimes bargain with our own non refundable time. And as we know, there's
Yeah.
only a fixed amount of hours in a given day, in a given week. And let's say, for example, if a speaker within the Digital Marketing Edge Summit was to gain an additional 25 clients, it could be the destruction of their business because they
Right.
don't have the processes in place in order to manage that overall lead
Yeah.
flow. And so when we talk about licensing, the idea of creating something once and selling it forever is one of the first fundamental concepts that makes licensing appealing. And
Yeah.
so when you start to, instead of exchanging, let's say if you're an author and you sell your book to one person, uh, there's no guarantee that the next person is going to buy. But when you
Mm-hmm.
start to sell your intellectual property or your content to a corporation, number one, they have the budget to pay for it. They have an annual
Yep.
budget that they use or lose in order to pay for it. Number two, there's recurring, let's say, terms within licensing agreements. So not only can you win a licensing proposal in 2023, but if the terms and conditions that you set forth are upheld by the company that you're dealing with, then they gain access for 2024, 25, 26. So it's a long-term subscription recurring revenue model. And when
Mm-hmm.
we start to think about, let's say, again, selling to individuals versus selling to companies, the beauty of licensing, Dumont, is minimum process orders. So if I have a book and I sell that book or license that book to a university, I can set within my licensing agreement the terms that in order for this licensing agreement to execute, I need a minimum of 15 books, 25 books, 45 books to be sold to your students
Mm-hmm.
in order for this deal to execute. So when you start to do the math, then you can quickly see how when you're executing one licensing agreement, you
Mm-hmm.
can gain a multiple of sales, and through non-exclusive licensing, you can also license the same intellectual property. That means the same book, the same
Yeah.
source, the same content to company A, B, university A, B, and continue down the path. And as we continue in this conversation, there will be discussions or examples of, let's say, licensing examples that we see each and every day that you didn't even realize.
Well, let's jump on that for a minute, or let's look at that for a minute, because why do you think that we, as as small business owners, and most of the people on this call have maybe one or two people, working their business with them. Um, what are some of the places that we may have seen, content licensing, but not realized that was what we were encountering or not understood it?
Great question. So, all of us at some point have been to some form of church or religious center. So,
Mhm.
the question that I want to ask the audience: does your priest, does your pastor, does your rabbi write the Holy Bible or text
Uh-huh.
within your church? Simple question.
Yeah, good
The hymn
example.
books within your given church, does the choir
Mhm.
write the hymn books, each song? And so
Right.
these are some common examples of licensing, in that
Yeah.
licensing within the religious industry is so lucrative that companies are stood up in order to provide that educational material to religious institutions around the world. Another example: all of us have been to some form of schooling, whether elementary,
Mhm.
college, or beyond. And so I'll ask you, audience, did your instructor, did your English teacher write your English book? The answer is no, of course not. And so, there are companies
Yeah.
that are stood up that provide non-exclusive licensing, meaning if you transfer from one college to another college across your city or town, you will see some of the same textbooks in place, and they don't modify the textbooks because it's non-exclusive. So these are two common examples
Mhm.
that you see each and every day. We've all experienced, but did not necessarily realize it. So the question, and one of the misconceptions that I'm going to present to the audience, is why not you? Meaning, if uh, agencies, universities, and corporations do not create their own content that they use to enrich or enroll or retain
Mhm.
their student body or employees, and they outsource to corporate North America, Why are you not providing your content, your intellectual property to those agencies and or entities?
Okay, and I understand that, and I understand your examples and all of that. I'm wondering, what holds us back from doing that? What I'm not saying this the right way. What limits us, or how do we limit ourselves in terms of licensing? Is it that we don't recognize the value of what we're putting out, or is it because we don't know what kinds of audiences would like it, or would gravitate towards it? Am I asking this in the right way? I'm not sure that I'm.
I understand the question. And so it's one of the biggest hurdles that I have to help my clients overcome. So if I, let's say, keep in mind, I design intellectual property and develop the systems around it and create licensing partnerships. And I've done so since 2008. So
Okay.
my wiring in terms of business development is always going to be
Mm-hmm.
intellectual property first versus product or service first. And so when I encounter a book or a course that I believe has the potential to be licensed, and I say to an author, well, you should take this business book and partner with the Small Business Administration, or you should partner or license this book to SCORE, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
always met with the resistance of my content is not good enough. And so one of the biggest challenges I have to help people overcome is giving them the permission to play the game at a world-class level. So in many cases, there's a mindset tape recorder that plays when it comes to doing business with corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And we often say, well, I'm a health coach. I don't think that my material is suitable for a corporate audience. And so, in order to overcome that, you have to realize that, again, companies do not create their own content. And when you think about nonprofit organizations across the world, when you think about charitable organizations, when you think about youth organizations, when you think about, let's say, various groups in all across the world, there is a match for what you're creating. It's just going down the process of making sure that you're presenting it not from a professional level, but thinking end to end as far as the customer experience, as far as the process of follow up, as in
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you dial in completely with your target audience. And in many cases, when you work with a company in developing a licensing deal, they will tell you exactly what their processes are, where the gaps are, so you create your
Oh,
intellectual
mhm.
property around those gaps.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it's a matter of doing our research.
Research is one of the most important steps to building effective content on a corporate level.
Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot of us don't even think about that. It never occurred to me to think about, well, how do they get those training manuals? And how do they do this? Yeah, yeah, that I'm starting to get the idea. So, as we're developing these assets, um, how do how do we, let me think of how to put this. How do we look at where we want to distribute this, or how we want to distribute this? Is this something that we need to understand from the start? Like, let's say that I develop a 6-week course on personal branding, and I want to, put that out there as licensed content. How would I go about that? How would I even start? I'm I'm kind of waffling on this question, but how would I even understand and know where I could look to do that? What my options might be.
Well, this is a good exercise for the audience. And so we have a scenario where there's a 6-week course on personal branding. And so when we think about personal branding, and oftentimes what we do as coaches or experts or teachers or leaders, we think about target audience from the standpoint of people. And the big shift, and this is the magic of licensing, instead of thinking of the people you want to target, you start to ask yourself, who are the entities, who are the companies that support my
Mm,
target audience at scale? So if we have a 6-week course on personal branding, then we may partner for, or let's say we identify 5 to 10 organizations that may have alignment with this particular course. So let's use Career Builder, for example, as our example. So we say that we have a 6-week course on personal branding, and Career Builder would be the ideal let's say, licensing partner. And
mhm,
so you start with not necessarily building out the program or course. You start with having a conversation. You provide the one sheet or the promotional details, the who, what, when, who it's for, how long it is, what the benefits are, and you develop that presentation. So that may be your pitch deck. That may be a landing page. That may be the let's say the overall what I call the one sheet, which is the promotional document for that. And
mm,
once you
mhm.
have that conversation, then you're able to develop. You want to develop. You want to get the agreement first, and then develop. Where most of us
Oh,
create without a target audience in mind or validation that it has been purchased. Now, let's say for there's a few of you right now that are thinking, well, how do I get in touch with Career Builder, or how do I get in touch with a larger company when I'm just a simple coach? And the practical way to get started with licensing is as follows. The number one source for licensing conversations comes from exceptional service delivered within your existing business. And so, where I would start, instead of, barking at the moon, so to speak, and trying to reach Career Builder, what I do
yeah.
is I always start with understanding that my existing employees, excuse me, my existing clients that may be in my Facebook group or within my list, they all go to work somewhere, whether they're a
Mm,
freelancer, whether they're an employee, whether
mhm,
they're a consultant, they have to go to work somewhere. And most licensing conversations start from referral conversations, and those referral conversations occur during the Monday meeting at their company. So they're in your Facebook group, they're a client, they
mhm,
like what you do, but they're in a meeting and there's a discussion where they say, well, we need a way for our employees to start to think about themselves as personal brands, because we're starting to focus on technical upskilling, or we want to
mm,
implement
mhm,
a lifetime learning program.
mhm,
SCORE, for example, implemented a lifetime learning program. And so someone within the meeting who is also a client of yours says, well, I know Dr. Dumont, she has created a 6-week program on personal branding. Can I introduce you to her and allow that conversation to happen? And
mhm,
so if you want to, from a practical standpoint, get started with licensing, there's a couple things that you need to do. Number one is spread the word within your existing client and prospect base. Meaning, if you have a newsletter, update your newsletter within the footer to say, if you enjoy this program, we also offer corporate training. If you'd like to know more, then
mhm,
email Dumont at digitalmarketingedgesummit.com. The
mhm.
second detail that you want to pay attention to is your website. And so when people come to your website, you need to add corporate training to your
Oh,
website header. And so you don't
Yeah.
have to create the entire package. What you do is you let people know that you're open for business. And again, licensing conversations come from the referral standpoint. And so if you identify, let's say, your clients, your prospects, your students within your existing communities that you've established,
Mhm.
then licensing conversations. Once you announce that it's you're open for business, you'd be surprised how quickly those transactions or conversations begin to happen.
Wow, that's really impressive. I think most of us just don't think about that. So one, we talk a lot about networking and finding opportunities with other people to partner with and all of this. And this certainly, just from the referral standpoint, this seems really, really important. And I'm wondering, with that Monday meeting, do these referrals often happen before that, or is it something that might come up within the conversation at a Monday meeting? Oh, we need to do something to help people with branding. Oh, I heard Dumont Owen does that. When how do we get in how do we position ourselves to be referred to for those referrals? How do we make that known to people that we are open to something like that?
Well, as I mentioned previously, if a speaker on the Digital Marketing Edge Summit was to gain 25 leads or
Mm,
25 clients from delivering their session at this summit, in many cases, it could derail, disrupt, destroy an existing business if processes are not in place. So, one of the
mm,
processes that you have to start to develop and think about is your corporate outreach strategy or your corporate partnership
mm,
strategy. The two easiest ways to do so without spending any money or marketing dollars is to update your existing list and your existing website with the details that you offer corporate packages.
oh,
Now, we have to think beyond the first step of offering it and say, well, what if someone reaches out and is interested? Then having, let's say, at a minimum, a landing page which describes the programs that you're licensing and let's say the overall process for doing so, along with a pitch deck outlining your corporate strategy are two great ways to kind of sweeten the overall proposition. You can take it a step further and to for another idea is once a quarter offer a quote unquote open house for corporate
mm,
members. So if we're thinking about referrals, you can
oh,
also go to your newsletter and say, on let's say September the 1st, we are hosting our next open house for corporate partners who are looking to gain licensing for the 6 week personal branding experience. And so
mm,
that can be delivered through Zoom, that can be delivered through your leading webinar software. And so you have to, again, announce, set up the overall promotional materials, and then you can take it a step further by having a recurring meeting. It can be virtual, it can be in person, in
mm,
order to lead those licensing or if we step away from licensing and use more common terms, corporate training packages. Now, I also want to point out briefly that another popular way to get started with licensing is peer to peer licensing, meaning
mm,
solopreneur to solopreneur. I'll give a quick example. This means if I want to license my content to the Digital Marketing Edge Summit, I could, let's say 3 months ago or 6 months ago, I could have contacted you and said, Dumont, I have a digital marketing action plan that
mm,
we can offer to every VIP attendee. And what this does is it gives an additional VIP value add, which incentivizes
Hmm.
to go
Absolutely.
VIP. For me, it provides additional, let's say, eyes and expands my audience in terms of people who are interested in digital marketing. So if I'm a digital marketing expert, I can offer that to any larger entity in order to
Hmm.
get my a larger footprint for the larger entity. They're always looking for content and value add to increase retention for their overall employees or clients. And so that's
Hmm.
an example of a peer-to-peer licensing example.
That makes some sense too. I'm just thinking about, because many of us as coaches or consultants have programs that we put people through, or have programs that people work through, and it just makes so much sense to me that we would then take that and find another way to distribute it, and to make that a recurring kind of revenue. I'm curious now. I know you've said that we can license courses, or books. What are some of the other things, other kinds of content that we might be able to license?
Well, let's take a step back and
Okay.
let's look at the wide range of opportunities. So if you are a coach and you have let's use the personal branding example once again. If you have a unique method for delivering personal branding results and transformation, you can license that content to an
Mm,
organization. To give you a very large scale example, the Ritz Carlton has a gold standard when it comes to customer service. Has been documented in books, case studies for many years. And so, what they started to do, since they had a reputation uh,
mm-hmm.
for exceptional customer service, they created a leadership academy in order to teach other companies how to run their business the Ritz Carlton way. And so they
Okay.
licensed this training to other companies. And so these are, so customer service, for example, is something that can be seen as esoteric.
Right.
It doesn't have a form or structure, but when you start
Right.
to put that process together, then you can train others in that way. If you have, let's say, a methodology to certify other coaches or trainers,
Mm,
you can
mm-hmm.
create a certification program, which is a
Oh
very
yeah.
popular form of licensing. If you have
Mm-hmm.
an event, let's say if you have a summit and you have a particular model for delivering that summit, maybe you have, let's say, a speakers event prior to, you have certain ways that you deliver live videos, and it's more or less a proprietary method for delivering
Mm-hmm.
summits. You can license that summit
Oh.
package to other coaches who are looking to offer summits, or other larger membership communities who
Mm-hmm.
need content or training to help their audience deliver summits. So you also can license social media content. So if you're a social media
Mm-hmm.
expert and you
Mm-hmm.
create content easily, you can create your favorite post and license that
Oh.
library to
Yeah.
other coaches who are looking to automate their social media. Maybe they struggle with content calendars and
Yeah.
keeping social media updated. So when you think about what you do specifically in the
Mm-hmm.
gaps that your target audience or a target membership community or
Mm-hmm.
organization may have, then you can look at the ways to license it. So everything from catchphrases, for example, Michael Buffer, the famous sports
Mm.
announcer, every time he says, "Let's get ready to rumble," he earns $1+ million.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And so there's many ways to partner with other organizations, and the only gap that exists is understanding the value of what you bring to the table and understanding what the value is to that entity. And as you're moving up the ladder and working with larger organizations, you can always do peer-to-peer licensing deals. So instead of partnering with someone based on your service, you can package what you do and offer
Mm.
the intellectual property as the bargaining chip to build
Mhm.
better relationships.
Yeah, and that peer-to-peer seems like a little less threatening way to ease ourselves into it. I know that, you and I have both talked because, we have different levels of services and programs, and most coaches and consultants do have that. And I was just thinking of all the ways that you could do that, because, for instance, if you had a premium program that people were buying into, say it was a 12-month mastermind, you might want to license, or you might want my personal branding um, um, expertise some way, through that. Maybe I could, license you, a free course on it or something like that. Would that be a good example?
Oh yes, and so when we think about the scenario of the 12-month mastermind, let's
Mm-hmm.
inject licensing into this model. And so first of all, we need to think about when people enroll. And so someone may be at a yes or no point. Is this for me? Is this valuable? Who are the testimonials? What will this do for me? And so
Mm-hmm.
from a licensing standpoint, you can offer, let's say, a training of some sort for people who are onboarding. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as a bonus for joining the mastermind, you gain the 6-week personal branding training.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say for the facilitator of the mastermind, the biggest challenge that they're going to face is that they have to keep the mastermind running. They have to be engaging. So the worst
Mm-hmm.
way to do this is to show up for every weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly call on your own and deliver every session. Because what if you get sick? What if your family has an emergency? What if you just need a
Yeah.
vacation and you're burned out? What if life gets in the way? And so, having certified or partnering with other instructors to come
Mm-hmm.
in and deliver their magic according to your curriculum is
Yeah.
another way that you can license your mastermind or bring in other uh, trainers as well. And so, when you think about um, the VIP, for example, or if there's, let's say, if it's personal branding, if you wanted to partner with a stylist, for example. So I like to wear custom suits. So I'm going to use this example.
Okay.
So if I partner with a celebrity stylist and create the Shadid brand of
Oh,
custom suits,
yeah.
where maybe on the lapel it has my logo, that's
Mm-hmm.
another example of licensing because I'm gifting
Sure.
my intellectual property to the finished product. And so
Mm-hmm.
that can be applied to stylists, that can be applied to photography, that can be applied to digital marketing. And so there's many
Sure.
different ways that, and finally, let's say for the 12-month mastermind, there are 2 in-person sessions at luxurious destinations. And so
I like
we
that.
can partner with a villa or event
Oh,
space and also offer. So if I wanted it to be called Elaser Town
yeah.
and have all of the promotional programs for my mastermind attendees to represent that branding, that's another example of licensing. So when you
Okay.
think about building a traditional business, especially service-based business,
Yeah.
licensing can be used. It's an extremely flexible model. And when you start to think about your intellectual property in terms of
Mhm.
how can I leverage it, and the world opens up in terms of opportunity.
Yeah, I would never even thought of that, Shadi. That is such a new, well, it's a new concept to me. And I think for a lot of us, because I think we have a tendency to undervalue the content or the product that we produce. I think that may be human nature. But I do see a lot of that. And I think in some cases it might be, what do I want to say? A lower hurdle for us to clear at first. Get our feet wet or whatever you. Well, no, hurdles and feet don't go together. Well, yeah, they do, but not in the way we want them to. So I can really see how that can be used, and I'm wondering, in terms of, because we have had, we've had such a roller coaster in this country for the last 3 years, just the pandemic and the results that and the kind of overreaching almost um, um, change in how we conduct business and how we go about that. And I'm wondering, because one of my true beliefs is that as entrepreneurs, especially as small business owners, I'm talking really small business owners, solopreneurs, and very small businesses. How do we, as such small business owners, contribute to the betterment of the economy? How do we help contribute to keeping this economy on a roll?
Well, small businesses, especially in the United States, are the lifeblood of success and innovation in the United States. And so when you think about what you need to do in order for that small business to stay afloat, one of
Hmm.
the first details you need to figure out is cash flow. And that's
Yeah.
one of the main reasons that businesses, let's say, don't stay around. And so when you think about uh, the exchange of time for money, especially, there's a limited amount of time. When you think about our current economy, in many cases, if you're selling to clients, they have competing priorities in many
Hmm.
cases since the pandemic for the first
Yeah.
time, where the basic necessities versus your coaching program, you have to think a full tank of gas,
Right.
groceries, or your 6 week program. And
Yeah.
so this is why the licensing model is essential. This is why digital assets are essential, because when you package what you can create once and sell to multiple organizations
Hmm.
and entities. And that's one powerful way to generate cash flow outside of your, let's say, sweat equity that you invest each
Yeah.
day in the work that you do. So you have to find a way to earn income outside of the services that you deliver. And the easy, I won't say the easiest, but the most straightforward path to do so is by packaging what because the World Wide Web is always available, and you can utilize that in sharing your messaging in your digital marketing efforts to solve
Okay.
problems for individuals who are seeking your services.
Okay, and you just brought another question to mind. We talked about the World Wide Web, which is worldwide. It's huge. Wait, what happened here?
There we
I
go.
accidentally dropped you out of the.
No
I hit
worries.
something. Yeah, you're back.
I'm here.
So we're good. Um, you know, the internet, just to me, and maybe it's a sign of my interactions with it, or how I learned this, but the internet is so big. I know that seems like a silly thing to say, but it is just immense. How do people go about finding these products that we develop, finding this content that we can license? What role does the World Wide Web, or what role do search engines play in that?
Well, when we talk about, let's say, search engines, wealth generation, and keeping our businesses afloat from a practical standpoint, we have to understand what point in time we are in as a society. We live in the on demand generation. What this means is, if you, for example, miss the Super Bowl, for those football fans out there, you're going to go and find the replay, the highlights,
Yeah.
and basically watch it again. Gone are the days where If you missed it live, then you have to hear about it word of mouth. You can
Yeah.
go online and find the answers or the entertainment that you need. So at this time, you can go and watch your favorite movie that may have been created 30 years ago and watch it today for the first time as if it's brand new anytime you want. And so
Yeah.
instead of, let's say, going to an encyclopedia now, you have information updated at your fingertips each and every point in every moment of the day. So, how this relates to content creators, to experts, to coaches, is that when people are looking for information specifically, when they're looking for problems that they need to solve, they are searching for solutions every minute, moment of the day. And so, as a business owner, as a content creator, as a personal brand, you have knowledge and you have experience. But what you have to start to flip around is what is the most expensive problem that you solve? What are some entry level problems that you solve? And who do you solve them for?
Yes.
And so, as a on demand society, when you begin to package what you know, you start you by asking the question, what are the most expensive problems that I solve? And also, what are the beginner problems that I solve? So instead of I know this
Mm,
about a certain subject, or I've been doing this for 32 years, I know everything there is to know, start to ask
mm,
yourself what problems you can solve for your target audience or for a targeted group of people. And when you package your digital products, your digital assets around what you solve, in many
yeah.
cases, it's the marriage of people searching for problems and you having the solution. And your solution does not have to be comprehensive. You just have to get your student from point A to point B. Now, that does not necessarily mean they need to build the funnel in one day. In many cases, it could be, for example, creating the landing page or creating the headline. And that's what you need to focus
Hold on
on is,
a
uh, and so when it comes to search engines,
It's
the
buffering over. I'm going to remove you and then put you back into the stream and see if that helps.
okay.
Okay. Oh, that seems to be better. So,
So when we
yeah,
think
go.
about search engines never rest. Search engines provide the gateway or the passport from problem to solution. What you're missing in your
Okay.
current business or brand is the solution. You're not providing a packaged solution. And when you do so, search engines provide a continuous avenue for people to find you and support you through consuming your solutions. Coming back. And so the overall detail regarding the last question that was asked is understanding that search engines are a passport from problem to solution, in that you, as a solution provider, as a content creator, as a coach, as an author, as a speaker, have the capability, the ability to not only create a solution for beginners, but you can provide a comprehensive, let's say, library of solutions that you can offer. And so, for example, if I create a digital asset, I package what I know to support digital marketers, for example. So let's use a clear uh, case study. And so, if the digital marketing cheat sheet for beginners was something that I created and provided as a digital asset hosted online, so I create a landing page, I make sure it's available, then I go about my normal business of marketing and sharing my ideas, my case studies, my knowledge, skills, and abilities with my audience through many channels. This can be email, this can be webinar, this can be social media, this could be on virtual and in-person stages. And so this allows for you to, uh, when I appear on those platforms, as a call to action, people can go and find those details and information. And so, um, when it's a difference between showing up and having the next step for your audience and showing up and not having the next step. And so you should always create the next step, in a process driven way to do so is through creating digital assets.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I apologize. People are saying, oh, Dumont, you are freezing. I think it was happening on my end too. So, Shadi, we're going to have to conclude in a few minutes, but I wondered if you could talk about some of the benefits. I understand. Hold on just a second, Shadi. There's nothing wrong with you.
And so when we talk about the benefits themselves, let's say content licensing, create once, sell forever. The beauty of content licensing is that when you have a deal that works, especially if it's non-exclusive, if I do a licensing deal for my training material with the State Department, I can encapsulate that feedback and use it for another licensing deal with another agency and improve upon it and not lose any of the rights to it. And so when we talk about our ideas being stolen or so on and so forth, licensing gives you the greatest leverage because you're not giving up ownership of your intellectual property. Let's say if you're an employee, for example, and you work for a company as a project manager, your project plans, every deliverable that you submit becomes ownership of the company. If you're laid off or fired, you don't get to take that intellectual property with you. It becomes property of the company, and every employee agreement operates in that way, as well
Yes.
as, let's say, 1099 or many self-employed. But with licensing, you're able to work with a company, absorb the credibility of being an official content provider or training provider for that particular company, and your content or your course or whatever you've licensed becomes absorbed by their marketing budget. So if you license your content to Harvard, you're in Harvard's marketing cycle, which in
Yeah,
many cases is much larger than your own budget. So you're
I would
using
think.
leverage to grow. And so from a credibility, authority, and let's say growth standpoint, licensing is a superior way to grow any service-based business, especially if you're a product-based company. You also need to think about the education that your buyer
Mm.
goes through to better use your product, and that's where licensing also can come into play.
Okay, and so with that licensing, can we put things in there about or requirements in there about what needs to be in place for this license to continue or to be renewed? Are there standards that we put in place in order to do that, so that we're not just licensing it infinite, into the future, into infinity. There is some kind of container, I guess, that it's in, and there are requirements for renewing that or for renewing the license.
Well, not only are there terms for renewing, but there's also terms for the licensing agreement to remain in good standing. For example, a university cannot decide to change the cover of the textbook and put
Uh,
the English professor's face on the cover. You will never see this because in every
yeah.
licensing agreement, these terms in terms of what the person who is, let's say, obtaining a license can do, how they can deliver it, And so every teacher you've ever seen in school had, let's say, a teacher's plan. And that
Mm-hmm.
is an example of that's the licensing terms and conditions in a curriculum format. And so you, as
Okay.
the license owner or the licensor, has the ability to set those terms in place to
Okay.
maintain your branding, maintain how it's delivered, maintain a certain standard. So if you need for someone to
Mm-hmm.
be college educated, for example, in order to
Mm-hmm.
deliver your program, or they need to have certain certifications within your business, you
Mm-hmm.
can mandate that and also make that part of the terms and conditions for the licensing agreement to remain in good standing.
Okay, well that makes some sense to me, and I really appreciate all the information you've given us. That is so useful. I have one last question, and this probably relates more to me and how I think of things. But we all hope that our children we plan for the future of our family and for what happens with them beyond. How would something like licensing our content, how would that figure into estate planning?
Okay, a quick question for the audience. If you're an author and you have sold books as a self published author on Amazon, for example, and God forbid you happen to pass away, where do your royalties go
Oh.
upon passing away? Most entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, coaches have no contingency plan for
Mhm.
their content in the event of their demise.
Yeah.
If you have a e-commerce store where you sell digital products and you happen to pass away, or you're incapacitated where you cannot speak or
Mhm.
move, um, who has access to your passwords? And so
Oh.
are these passwords in writing? And so when we start to
Yeah.
think about estate planning, it's building the legacy guidelines around your intellectual property. And so starting to put those in writing, you can, let's say, set up instructions for that revenue to be used for a scholarship, for example, or to
Okay.
pay off certain debt, or to
Mhm.
finance existing properties or estates that you may have. And so you have to start to think about from a standard estate planning standpoint, but also you can put the revenue from your courses, especially if you're a 6 and 7 figure course
Yeah.
creator or author. You can start to move those assets into a trust and have
Mm.
specific
Mhm.
instructions around uh, the use of those funds moving forward. And so we are content creators, and many of us undervalue our content. But I can tell you, if you were to pass away, your royalties will not go to a family member or someone that is going to benefit your legacy. It may go back to the state. Amazon may delete your account. But if you
Mhm.
have these details in writing, then you can start to utilize what you've created today to benefit future generations.
Wow, that is really interesting because that's not something that I think most of us would think about when we're doing something like that. It would never occur to me that I needed to make a plan as to how those royalties were used afterwards. And I think that's a big part of our legacy. And so many of us who are on this call are in the coaching or consulting, kinds of areas. So we are small entities, and we're just not used to thinking that way. It's not something that comes naturally. So this has been just eye-opening, Shadid. I mean, I really had no idea about any of this, and I'm sure that a lot of other people didn't too. So I really want to thank you for coming on board, or coming on and presenting to us. And I also know that you have something for our listeners today that could be very helpful with that, and that's your content licensing blueprint. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when we start to go into detail about uh, corporate clients and going from where we are to where we want to be, where we're working with entities that are going to respect our work and pay for it. And corporate clients tends to be a mystery for many, a black hole, so to speak. And so the corporate clients checklist will allow for you to understand how to position yourself, some of the assets that you need online, and overall copywriting and overall guidance on how to start to create those corporate relationships that will stabilize your business, boost your credibility and authority, and position you as the leading expert within your market or industry.
You know, quite frankly, you've opened up a whole different world. And the first time I ever talked to you, you started talking about some of these things, and I think you probably saw my head spinning. You know, I was doing a real circle there. But this is a head spinner. You know, if we have not been aware of this, I mean, I'm thinking of all the textbooks I bought in college, right? Those were probably all licensed. I'm guessing. You know, so you know, this is, I think, just a potential new market that probably a lot of us have never thought of. You know, that it's never occurred to us that we could take what we've already developed and package it in such a way that it would be of interest to others. So I want to thank you for this. This has been such a great program. And you have really opened our eyes to a lot of different things. Thank you again. This has been amazing. And you have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Same to you.
Okay, bye-bye.